Welcome back, Winning Hand, one card at a time. I'm Boom Guy. I'm here today with Leith This.
Yeah, what's up?
I'm going to say that again.
Oh, well, what the hell?
Because I said it wrong.
You just went. Welcome back to Winning Hand, one card at a time.
I'm starting now. Just jumping in. Just mixing it up this time. Ready? Welcome back, Winning Hand, one card at a time. I'm Boom Guy. This is our podcast. I'm here today with Lazy Titan and Lethis. Say hello, boys.
Hey, what's up?
What's cracking?
And let's get right into it. We have a lot to talk about today. This is episode 39. It is all about phase disruption. After this episode, we are 3/4 of the way through Vision Month. I am curious to see how many subscribers we lost during this month. I know nobody else cares about Vision, but I hope you're getting something out of this, seriously, because I'm having fun with it. Vision's my favorite character, but I think diving deep on a hero is interesting, and I think this is definitely something that I would like to revisit later with other characters. What do you guys think?
Here, here.
Here, I believe.
I mean, I'm not... this is probably apparent by now that I'm not the biggest Vision fan, but I still think he's interesting to talk about, and I think talking about why he's not the most interesting to me is itself interesting.
Yeah, I think there's interesting things to say about all the heroes, right? Whether you like them or not. All the cards, too. That's why we have a whole podcast based around one card at a time. I should patent that. Anyway, let's get into it. Lethis, why don't you start by telling me today what is on your mind?
I've been thinking about protection cards that do not just reduce incoming damage. Like, I have a tendency when I first look at protection to look at the defense events and just trying to avoid taking damage so I can save my basic powers for other things. But I've been looking at what I'm calling like direct versus indirect damage prevention. So something like sidestep, which obviously prevents an amount of damage now when you play it, compared to something like hard knocks, which does a thing and then prevents damage later, basically. And trying to be a little bit more open-minded about the protection cards that I look at, play some of those allies that I tend to skip over. And I got to this by playing aggression again and reminding myself how much I hate that aspect. And I just don't enjoy it. I'm trying so hard, and it's not working for me.
I have been a long time protection truther on this podcast. I love protection. I think it's great. I think protection is the best aspect in the game. I will even say I think it's probably it's not the strongest because leadership is leadership. But I think it's the most varied. It has the most different archetypes and different ways to play it. It has, I think, the most interesting cards. I'm a big protection fan.
I like protection a lot. It's just picking protection over justice is hard for me a lot of times. It depends a lot on the hero. Also, I'm not quite sure how I feel about leadership compared to the other aspects anymore. Like, at one point, I definitely would have agreed, it's the strongest. I'm not sure if I do anymore.
Really?
Which is a weird thing for me to realize right now out loud.
It just has some, real staples that, Make the Call is just straight up broken. And
I don't think Make the Call is that special.
Are we crazy now? Are we just lying on this podcast?
I don't even know what to say.
Regroup
if I and make
think
the
of
call?
One bonkers card in leadership, the first thing I think of is clarity of purpose.
What?
No.
What is happening?
It's Make the Call.
Why is Make the Call so special?
Allies are the best card type in the game, and Make the Call lets you play them again.
Yes.
It's just more allies in your deck.
Mm-hmm.
You could just put more allies in your deck, though.
Yeah, but they let you play the best allies again. And then you can play Ironheart and Maria Hill over and over and over and over and over again.
I mean, not if you haven't drawn them.
I'm not saying it's interesting.
You play anything. No, it's not fun. It's terrible. Allies suck. Anyone who plays them in their deck is bad.
You can abuse Make the Call by putting something like Call for Aid in there with not very many Avengers, dumping half your deck, and then you can abuse it. Make the Call is crazy.
There's some janky Call for Aid type stuff you can do. I think the only janky Call for Aid deck I've built was for War Machine, because it basically serves as a Find Iron Man button.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't think Make the Call is broken at all. That's interesting.
Maybe broken isn't the right word. I think if that word gets tossed around, but it is bonkers good. It's such a good card.
It's fine.
It's just a stand-in for whatever the best ally is right now. It's just always the best ally.
What are you saying, man?
100% of the time, it's the best ally you could play.
This is why the people love you, Lucas, because you have crazy takes. You say insane things right out of the gate. Here we are, like 3 minutes into the podcast. You are saying crazy stuff.
Okay.
We come on here and we state things that are just kind of general consensus opinions, and you're just like, no,
I don't think
that's not true.
I mean, there's allies you want to play and keep around for a long time and they're really strong, but the ones that you want to play repeatedly, except for like Maria Hill, are a little more situational. They're really expensive. And also, as time has gone on, they've started printing more allies that have effects when you play them from hand as opposed to when they enter play.
True.
So Make the Call doesn't even trigger them.
True.
Like, it's definitely
They
lost
did
some
that
of its
because
edge.
Make the Call was so good. They nerfed it.
Because Make the Call and
That's how
Rapid
good it
Response
is.
are so crazy.
It's so powerful. They had to make cards to not make it work anymore.
Rapid Response is cool. I like Rapid Response more.
So there are some crazy good allies in leadership. Like, would you say Maria Hill's broken? Is she just crazy?
I think she's slightly too strong. I don't think she's broken.
Okay. Are there cards you think are broken in the game?
In the game? Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Give me one example.
Okay.
I don't.
But
I'm
not
not
in leadership.
Okay.
I mean, Clarity of Purpose.
You think Clarity of Purpose is broken?
Yeah, it should not exist.
Interesting. It's not the leadership card I would have singled out. Obviously, clearly I didn't. But, that's why I keep you around, because you have crazy takes, and it amuses me and the people. So
Entertain us.
thank you. Moving
go back
right
to my
along
corner
from...
now.
Yeah. Let's
Go
just
back to the dungeon, and we'll ask you when we have a take for you to give.
Yeah, when I need you, I will call you again. I'm going to move on and go next, because I have been playing a lot. Speaking of Clarity of Purpose, that is actually a great segue. You are becoming a professional podcaster.
As always, calling out a segue makes it a better segue.
Make up your mind. Pick a lane.
I've been playing Venom. Venom just literally has Clarity of Purpose built in. And I know you and I have talked about this off air a little bit.
Yes.
I say air like we're on the radio. We're not. It's 2024.
It is air. That's what's happening.
That's true. It's all in the ether. Anyway, I've been playing a lot of Venom, and one of the things that has occurred to me is I would really like to see the weapon keyword expanded. I'd like to see more weapons. I'd like to see more ways to interact with weapons outside of like hero kits. I want to see more ways to kind of play with that, whether it's upgrades for allies, whether it's more weapons that heroes have access to in different aspects, but especially in aggression, because I use lock and load, which feels really cool and thematic, but then it's like not always amazing.
The Punisher.
I would like to see a version of Pulse Grenade that doesn't suck. That's my stance. It's thematically such a cool thing, but that card is so bad. I know there's janky things you can do with it, like Mean Swing. I don't want to. Just give me a cool grenade.
Yeah, and the people out there would like a Hulk that doesn't suck.
Yes.
But you're going for Pulse Grenade. I respect
Shocking.
it.
Card game players want cards that aren't bad. Incredible.
I mean,
shocks the world.
For what it's worth, I like some bad cards.
I'd like some bad cards too. Like Make the Call.
So I have been playing a lot of Venom, and I've been trying in different aspects, because I think when he first came out, I played him a lot in Justice. I played him a lot in Protection, because Protection is great. I feel like Justice, when he came out, like at that point in the game, Justice was really kind of his like place. I think a lot of people played him in Justice, but I think he's good in all the aspects. He's fun. I played him in Leadership a little bit, trying to lean into like the thematics of making him a soldier, by putting like Mission Leader on him and using the shield stuff and Sky Destroyer. Welcome Aboard is a crazy card. That card is really, really good. I think Venom is fun. I know you and I have talked about this, Leithus, because you think Venom is like way, 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 way at the top.
Yes, like in terms of power. Yes.
I don't quite get there with him. I think he's fun, and I think he's good and versatile, but
I don't understand.
Wait.
Right.
You think Venom is like, are we talking like the best hero or like up there with the best?
Venom is clearly S tier. He's not like the strongest hero in the game, but he is clearly S tier. How do you die as Venom?
Take damage.
Give me like the 30-second elevator pitch for why Venom is so strong. Go. Tell the people, Leithus. You did not prepare for this. Let everybody know. I'm putting you on the spot, but just give me the spiel. Help me understand.
So the free resource every turn makes him a 6-resource hero, which lets you play 2 2-cost cards a turn, which itself is bonkers. Multi-gun takes care of whatever problem you have whenever you need it. it basically invalidates his entire Nemesis set, which is not a threat to him whatsoever. Project Rebirth 2.0 is possibly the strongest support in the entire game. Grasping Tendrils is insanely powerful. Like, it basically shuts out 2 villain activations for 3 effective resources. That's nuts. Behind Enemy Lines is a decent thwart with a Confuse stapled on top of it. That's nutty. He's so strong. How on earth do you not see him as being like...
Here's my thing. So Venom has 3 cards. He has a thwart card, attack card, and a defense card, each of which do something good plus stun, confuse. Or the attack one does like...
I will readily concede that his attack event is not impressive. It's fine, but it's not impressive.
I played Magic one time, and her attack and thwart cards are just better. It's just 2 costs, stun and confuse, but does more damage.
They're way more conditional.
And it's actually easier to pull off because you can put a card on top of your deck and you don't have to spend specific resources.
What are you talking about?
They're just literally the same cards, but better and easier to pull off. Instead of whatever garbage Venom has been kicking around.
In no universe is Magic's condition easier to fulfill than Venom's.
She has a card that lets you put something on top of your deck. You can just pick the card on top. So if I want to do 4 damage and a stun, I can just put a card in there.
You're talking about Limbo, right?
That's if you have Limbo. And then you're using Limbo for that, as opposed to...
my deck. Like, it's so easy. And Venom, you have to spend, like, okay, you have to spend 2 of the same resources. That's fine. It's just less damage. Venom is mediocre at best. He's maybe A tier on a good day, if we're pushing it here. He is the most mid-hero I have ever seen in this entire game. Like,
wow, what are you talking about?
There's absolutely no way that you're going to tell me that he's S tier. S tier is what, the top 10%? I could name 5 heroes at the top of my head right now that are exponentially better than
There's
Venom.
3 heroes I can think of off the top of my head that I would rate as being stronger than him. Strange Bishop, is at the top because he's strange.
I would say
not Bishop.
Spider-Ham, Ironheart, Nova. Easy. And we keep going. X-23.
No.
Angel.
No.
What are you talking about? Are we playing the same game? Are you playing poker? What are you talking about?
Let's say it's heated right now.
You have to be playing backgammon or something.
The fabric of this podcast is coming apart right now.
The whole podcast is frank.
Way.
Episode 40 might not happen.
Episode 40 might be missing Lazy Titan.
Someone's going to quit. God. Okay. So I need people to email me, winninghandpodcast@gmail.com, or leave a comment on whatever platform you're on. We could do a tier list. We could do a ranking. Clearly, with the 2 of you, it would be controversial. It would be heated. And maybe the people want to hear that. We can do it like presidential debate style. We'll just
dear.
The 2 of you can just like have I'll moderate. We'll have your moments. I don't know if that's a good idea or not. Email me, winninghandpodcast@gmail.com. Let me know what you think.
You have to cut our mics.
Anyway, that was my thing on Venom. We had a quick little side quest where we talked about the strength of Venom. There were some takes on both sides. One of you likes Red Dagger, so I can't take you seriously. I'm not going to say who it is. Let's go on. Lazy Titan, tell me what is on your mind that isn't about Venom right now.
Okay, it's going to be hard because oh my God, my head nearly exploded in fire like Hades from Hercules. Yeah, the Disney Hades fire came out of my head as I was just like, what are we talking about? But I have recently finally played the 2 new heroes from the Age of Apocalypse box. I played both Magic and Bishop separately against villains from that box. Magic, like I've previously alluded to, pretty good. She's not, from my one play, she's not like excellent. She's, I would say, quite good, but not as good as I expected her to be. I expected just a blanket cost reduce every turn and an extra card in your hand to be very powerful. It is, but it's not quite as good as I thought it would be. It's not like instant S like I was expecting.
I'll agree with that. Like, I think she's a lot more balanced than I expected her to be, and more engaging.
Yeah, it was very
I think
fun.
Most of the community kind of wrote her off as OP before she was ever released. Based on the teaser, we were all like, she's... I mean, first of all, Mystic and X-Men. So, like, regardless of what her cards are, she's already got a huge leg up. But yeah, I think she is more balanced than I thought going in. But go on.
And on the other end of the spectrum, Bishop is more unbalanced than I was expecting him to be. He's so good, quite insanely good. His his armor where he can just not take damage is pretty crazy. It basically, for those who don't know, it's whenever his ability as a hero is whenever you take damage, you discard that many cards on the top of your deck, and you put all the resource cards discarded that way into your hand. And his armor lets you exhaust the armor, not yourself. Exhaust the armor to heal 1 damage from yourself for each resource card in your hand. Crazy. And he comes with 3 resource cards. So if most decks I've seen have like 10 to 12 resource cards in there, on average you're gonna get like 3 or 4 health back. So if you're taking 3 or 4 damage, like you're pretty solidly in the green there. And his cards all do way too much, and he has so many resources you can pay for basically all of them, and he makes free money whenever he gets hit. He's really, really quite good.
He's better than I thought he was going to be, I will say.
Yeah, his cards will give you bonuses if you spend resource cards on them, not his own, but just any resource card. So like 2 costs for a ready and draw card if you spend a resource on it, or 3 costs for 6 in a stun if you spend a resource on it. Just the amount, the economy is crazy. It's similar to Domino, where you just like have way too much money to do things, but he also has some healing, and it's a little more consistent. Domino her whole thing is like stacking the deck, but it is a little bit more inconsistent, I would say.
Yeah, Bishop is crazy good. He is definitely better than I thought he was going to be. I think that's the community consensus. Everyone was kind of iffy on him before he was released, and then people started playing him, and it was like, oh wow, this he packs a punch.
I remember reading his cards when the previews came out and seeing his armor and being like, oh, that's insane. That feels really good. And then I actually played it, and I was like, wow, this is
his defense card unfair. Is crazy.
It's only one time. Yeah, his defense card is can't take more than 3 damage and put a resource card from your discard pile back in your hand.
All of them.
All of them back in your deck. You shuffle them all back in your deck, and then you'll take damage and discard them. And wow,
it's so good.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, he's really, really good. No, I think Magic, credit to the designers, honestly. I thought right off the bat when I saw the cards released, the article or whatever, I was like, okay, this is just... She's going to be S tier off the jump, like she's right at the top. And she's not, like not even close. So...
but still good.
Still quite good. Yeah, I would not put her in the S tier, though, like just without having really thought it through. Doesn't scream S tier in my gut.
Like I'm happy to see her at the table.
Yeah. I don't care about the character at all. So like I don't have any love. I don't really know what it was before the article came out. I don't know what a Magic is.
Play Midnight Suns.
Small little detour here. Have you watched the new X-Men 97 animated show?
I've only watched the first episode.
I think I don't think I've watched any of it.
Okay, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, everybody's talking about it. People started talking about it, so I was like, oh, I will go back, and I'm going to continue on your detour. And so I went on to Disney Plus, and I was like, well, I'll watch the old one, because I didn't watch it as a kid. And I was like, I'll just, I'll catch up, whatever, because it's supposed to be a continuation. I started watching it, and oh boy. I got like 2 episodes in, and I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah, well,
I have better things to do.
People were telling you to watch this cool new modern show, and you decided to watch a show from 30 years ago instead. Like, that's not the same thing.
But what I read and what I heard is that the show is like a direct continuation. It picks up like just as if it's another season of that show. So I thought, oh, maybe I should go back and familiarize myself to some degree. Nope, mistake.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll watch it. I don't know. You watched the Lazy Titan?
I've watched like half of it. It's pretty cool.
It's good. No spoilers.
No spoilers. It's interesting. It kept my attention.
I mean, I will spoil something, only what they've teased on social media. I was like not very into it, and then I saw a clip, and I think I saw Captain America show up, and I was like, honestly, maybe I should watch that. So I'm here for
Bishop's in it. Bishop's in it. He shows up a few times.
Don't care.
And that reminded me.
Don't care, Bishop.
Even after playing the game, you don't care.
All right, we have an audience question, and I think Lazy Titan read the last audience question. Leithus, do you want to read the audience question for us today?
This is from Brad Olson. Brad says, I enjoyed listening to the latest episode where you discussed Sidekick. I hope they come out with a Sidekick implementation for other aspects, justice, protection, and aggression. It seems almost overkill to have it implemented only in leadership. It's doing more of what leadership does well already. It seems like they could create some interesting interactions with a sidekick and aggression, like synchronized attack, or protection like shield wall or justice, working together. I haven't really thought too hard about what these cards would do. Any thoughts on sidekicks outside of leadership? End of question.
Well, thanks for your email, Brad. If you also want to have your email read on the podcast, you can email me winninghandpodcast@gmail.com or put a comment on whatever platform you're listening on, YouTube, Spotify, blah, 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 and I will answer them as much as I can. You guys were not on no, Leithas, you were on the Sidekick episode.
I was on the Sidekick episode, yeah.
Lazy Titan, you were not there.
Nope.
And I can feel confident saying you have neither listened to it nor have you played with Sidekick. So we will temper your thoughts.
I will neither confirm nor deny your allegations. I'd like to speak to my lawyer.
Okay, that's fair. Honestly, I will give you that. So Sidekick, Leithas, what's your first reaction here? Sidekick outside of leadership? What do you think?
My inclination is to say no, don't do that. It works well in leadership because it's an interesting leadership thing. It fits with what leadership is supposed to do. And like I said in the Sidekick episode, I like that it brings the spotlight back to like the hero you're choosing a little bit more. I think they have to be really careful about what sorts of ally specific stuff they print outside of leadership. I think the easiest example to point to is Boot Camp, which can sort of distort your entire deck into being a pseudo leadership deck in aggression, which is, I don't know, maybe that's fine. I don't know. I don't love it. They do have some supports in the other aspects that do specifically interact with allies in a way that I think is fine. It's not like so strong that it overshadows the aspect, but it synergizes just enough to make them decent options. And then X-Men have ally-focused events that lean into the aspect identities. I think if you were to have a sidekick-like card in another aspect, it would threaten to overshadow leadership, which is a weird thing to say. Because like if aggression can do it, what makes leadership special anymore? Which again is kind of a criticism of Boot Camp.
Well, Boot Camp I think should have maybe given them all -1 thwart or something as well to kind of balance that a little bit.
That's interesting.
To make it, I'm okay with Boot Camp, but I think it just can be really, really strong. I like the idea of what Brad is saying here, but I agree with you that if you take it outside of leadership, then what is leadership really doing? So in my mind, the cards he suggested, like synchronized attack or shield wall or working together, those sound more to me like alliance cards. And I wouldn't mind seeing some kind of card that interacts with your signature ally, because every hero has one, whether in leadership or not. So whether it's an alliance card that you exhaust both of them to do something, or they somehow interact with an event card or something, maybe I could be okay with that. But Sidekick specifically, I don't think I want that in other aspects.
And to be clear, I think there's room to design cards that interact specifically with allies and other aspects. I think just trying to, like, implementing a card that encourages you to build your whole deck around it and an ally in another aspect is dangerous ground. It's like those X-Men events, for example, aren't
Like
even
game
that
time and stuff.
Well, their game time exists. That's not what I was thinking. I was thinking like Mutant Peacekeepers, Team Strike, Mutant Protectors.
There's the one that attacks too, like Team
that's
Strike.
Team Strike.
Yep.
Yeah. They're not even crazy, like, powerful. They're fine. They lean into the identity. They work because they let you extend those allies' lives a little bit. Like, I think that's a good design space for it to sit in, where it's an option, but it's not such an overwhelmingly strong option that it kind of detracts from leadership's spotlight.
What if these theoretic sidekick cards cared about, instead of caring about allies, they cared about like more interesting card types, like weapons? Like, what if the aggression one cared about having a signature weapon instead of garbage allies?
Yeah.
Like, or the justice one could care about, I don't know who doesn't matter, but something.
Mean Swing does exist.
But Mean Swing is not as good as Sidekick. Like, not the same. Like, Mean Swing exists, but like, what about like a weapon that makes your weapon not restricted? Are you telling me that Sidekick is as good as Mean Swing? Is that what we're
No,
saying?
You're
but
the
I think-
aggression player.
I think
Mean Swing's not that good. It's mediocre at best.
I
there's no
like
good
what you're
weapons.
saying though. Like, in leadership has a card that interacts with your signature ally. There could be a card that interacts with your signature weapon, right? Not every hero has one, but the
But you
ones
could-
that do then could lean into that somehow, and it could boost that. That's not a terrible
Take
idea.
restricted off your weapons or something. I don't know. Because some heroes like weapons would be a cool thing to expand on in aggression or even in justice. And there's a lot of heroes that they design to just have only their weapons, like Drax or Venom, who like they have weapons but they can't hold any more past their own because they're just restricted for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And then like Venom gets that extra one, but he still has his 3 weapons, so he basically has like 0 slots outside of his own cards.
What if it was some kind of like an ammo refill or something, where like if you have a signature weapon, then it refills your ammo at faster rate or something like that? I don't know.
We can do something, but
I
just
feel like
it
there's
doesn't
an
have to
idea
necessarily
there.
be tied to allies, because that's like leadership's thing.
I feel like there's ideas here. None of us are game designers. I don't know if that answered your question, Brad, but hopefully you got to hear us muse about it, and now you can flex on all your friends at work because you were name dropped on the Winning Hand podcast, and I know they all listen. If they don't, you should recommend it to them. Anyway, let's move on to the card of the day. The card of the day is one I am excited to talk about. It is continuing our deep dive on Vision, where we have 4 episodes in a month instead of the normal 2. And we talk about a different card in his kit each week. We talked about the Vision Hero card, and we talked about Solar Beam last week. Now we're talking about Phased Disruption. I will read the card today because I haven't read the card in a while. The card is, as I said, called Phased Disruption. It is a 2-cost event. It is superpower traded, and it says, play only if Vision is in intangible mass form. Hero action, confuse an enemy. Choose an attachment on that enemy with the text hero action or hero response and discard that attachment. It has an energy resource if that matters, and it has custom art from Juan Santa Cruz. So, Lazy Titan, why don't you describe for the listeners what this art is? What are we looking at here?
So basically, what we're looking at here, I don't know how many of our avid fans have watched the Flash show on the CW. But
That's a deep cut.
that's
Okay.
a deep cut. That's a deep cut. And you know where I'm going with this. If you're a true fan, if you're a CWer, you know where I'm going with this.
I'm not.
But there's like I don't know if it's like a Flash thing, but in that show, a lot of times the speedsters with the people like the Flash's enemies and stuff, the Reverse Flash, will speed up their hands and then crush somebody's heart by going through their chest, and that's basically what he's doing here. There's like a random AIM soldier whose name is Steve. He has a husband and 2 kids at home. He's a lonely man, and he just is working. He's working to pay the bills, and Vision has stabbed him through the heart, crushed his internal organs, and you can see around him the light leaving his body. You can see his soul joining the astral realm as Vision executes a man in the streets of New York. So what we are seeing here is a public execution.
What is happening?
Lazy
And
Titan.
that's all we need to know.
Okay.
It's like
What
a
Lazy
villain
Titan-
turn.
What Lazy Titan meant to say in his own special way is that
I said what I
Vision
meant, and I meant what I said.
is coming up from behind an AIM soldier. Looks like he's wearing some kind of a suit, and he's phasing his hand through the chest of this poor man from behind. And he's, I don't know. He's like phasing through. I guess that's all I can say. This guy's wearing a yellow suit. There's like a city in the background. It's, the art's good. I think it tells us what it does. Lazy Titan's long
Tirade.
meandering ideas about the card were informed by the CW show Flash, which, in case you haven't watched it, don't bother. It's an old CW soap opera that was cool for the first season. I will say, as a Flash fan myself, it went way off the rails pretty quickly. But
Oh man,
That's a deep cut.
What a
Thanks for
pull.
that, Lazy Titan.
Mercy.
You made me.
I didn't realize how deep of a cut that was until I really heard the words I said.
It's like a
I
10-year-old
was like,
CW
hey, I've seen
show.
that show. I'm realizing that now, and I saw it, and I was like, oh, that's the first thing I thought of, and it's the first thing I think of every time. And then I was like, oh man, wow, what a pull! That's from 2013. What are we doing? And then I just.
But you'd
went
already
with
started
it.
at that point.
I had already
You're
started,
like,
and
I
I'm
can't.
not one to back down, so I went for it.
First thing you
and-
thought of was a DC TV show.
I mean, every time I see that card, I think of the Flash show. That's the first thing I think of. So I was like, oh, what is he doing? That's an easy like mental image to draw for anyone who's seen this ancient show.
That's fair. Okay, I will say.
sorry.
What do you guys think about this art?
I think it's cool. My only problem with it is like the main. I guess we'll get more into this when we talk about what the actual card does. But the main thing it does is disarm people, and
Yep.
he doesn't really seem to be disarming anyone. He's just kind of stabbing this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
it's like
fair.
I wish I saw some kind of like him like disarming somebody or taking somebody's weapon. Or it may be someone more interesting than like just an aim soldier, just like
Well,
a guy.
I think you're onto something there. Like the two things this card does, confusing and disarming, doesn't seem to be either of the things that's happening in the art.
Maybe
So-
the theme of the art seems like a miss to me on this one. Like
Yep.
maybe he is just startling the soldier. Like you can see that Vision's hand is transparent, so maybe he's still intangible. And so it's just confusing this guy. Like there's an arm popping out of my chest.
That would be confusing, so that's understandable.
Yeah.
I would be surprised.
But it's just kind of it's confusing as the player. Like, is he phasing in and like solidifying and hurting the guy? Because like the card doesn't represent that in its text. It would have been cooler to see him interacting with like a piece of machinery or like a weapon or like some sort of robotic enemy and like breaking part of it or something like that. Phasing his hand through a human soldier is a weird choice for what the card does, especially like the guy has his blaster thing right there.
Still in his
Vision's
hand.
not messing with that.
Yeah, he's holding his
he's
gun.
ignoring that.
Yeah.
He's messing with the soldier himself.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the theme here is on point for the card. I think for Vision's powers and for what we know about Vision and what we talked about a couple episodes ago, this fits
Yes.
to a T.
Yes,
the
absolutely.
art doesn't quite represent that for me. That's a little bit of a miss, but that seamlessly transitions us into talking about the theme. And I think this is, as we said, this is right on point. Like it makes sense that he can surprise the villain, come up from behind, phase in through a wall, discard attachments. I think that is very thematic for Vision.
Yeah, for sure. And the art's not bad. It's just thematically
Yeah.
weird.
Okay, so the power of this card, what do you guys think? I'll let you guys go first here. I have thoughts.
I would say that this card it's not excellent. It's interesting because I believe it was the first of its kind of a card that can
It was.
discard attachments with hero responses. There are now a couple of those. Shadowcat got one, and there's an ally in aggression, Sunfire, who can do it. But it's not a common thing, and he was the first to do it, and that was sort of the most interesting part of this card. The Confuse is honestly an afterthought, at least to me. It's getting rid of the attachment that's big, because I wouldn't really play it if there was no attachment out there. So it's powerful when you play it, but you really only play it when you're going to get the most value out of it. So if you're just playing it for 2 and a Confuse, it's not very good. But if it's 2 and a Confuse and discarding a hero response, which are usually, at least nowadays, are like get attacked, take 3 damage, and then
Spend a bunch of
discard it.
resources.
Then
Yeah.
or spend basic attack and spend 3 resources. So like this is now confusing the villain, and you're getting a discount on that. You're saving yourself damage and getting rid of potentially bad upgrade or something.
Yeah. I
It's
should
quite
have looked
powerful, I'd
up
say.
how many villain attachments there are that fall in this category. There are some really bad ones, like you said, Lazy Titan. And that's where I think this card is awesome. I think it is significant to talk about it. It was the first one. So then when this card came out, there was no other way to get rid of those attachments. And those attachments have only gotten worse from the standpoint of like what you have to pay to get rid of them and their power. So it holds up in that sense. The Confuse is good. I think in the last wave or two, we've gotten a lot more confused in the game, and I think that has faded here, like the power of it for Vision. There wasn't a lot of ways to just straight up confuse people several waves ago either, if we think back. In Justice, there was the gun, but there wasn't a lot of other ways to do it. Now we have the Psylocke ally, and there's other ways to add confuse. So I think both of these were pretty unique in Wave 4 when this came out. Now they're both less. And that's where I think the power is kind of faded, because you don't want to pay 2 just for a confuse. That doesn't feel great. I mean, it never feels great.
I think it's passable. It's not amazing. It's fine.
It's okay. It's not you would never play it, but it doesn't feel great, right?
Yeah.
And it never feels great to play a card where you don't hit the entire card, no matter what that card is. It always feels bad if you can't hit part of it. And there's like a lot of times you just don't have a villain with an attachment, and then you just don't get the big part of the card, or they have an attachment but they're stalwart, and that doesn't feel great either. So yeah, I think the power is pretty mid on this.
It's a hard one to talk about. It's like the ceiling for this card is like sky high, depending on what the attachment is and whether that confuse matters. It's just that the application's so niche that a lot of times that's not what ends up happening. But I mean, it's a good card. It's just not always a card that you're gonna be super excited to see in a particular matchup. Like, I mean, if you think about like even Claw has 2 attachments, both of which require 3 resources to get rid of, and it requires 1 of each. Phase Disruption is the same cost and gets rid of any of them, and you don't need to resource match, and you have the confuse stacked on top of it. Like, that's really good.
That is good.
And there are other scenarios where it's even stronger than that, but like you said, there's times where that just isn't the way it shakes out. So like I like the card. I think the power level is high but inconsistent. But when it does hit, it feels really good. Like, this reminds me of like Full Blast for Cyclops, where it's like a card that a lot of times you just pitch, doesn't do what you really want, but when it does work, like, it's a moment you remember that makes a big impact to the table.
Yeah, this feels like a tech card, and it feels very situational. I think if this was a basic card, it would see use, right? If this was a 2-cost event, seriously, like, you would use it, right? But you wouldn't use it that often.
I mean,
there are certain matchups you'd play for it, right?
It'd be bonkers powerful as a basic card, but
even then, you wouldn't use it in all your decks. It would be very
true.
situational, and you would only put it in certain matchups where you knew
probably only 1 copy.
You're gonna have a good chance to use it, right? So
since Professor X has been printed, yes.
I mean, Professor X is damn near. He's the new Nick Fury. He's in so many decks these days. Part of that's because we're into mutants a lot right now, but I feel like he goes into almost every deck now.
Yeah.
If you're playing a true solo game, especially because that confuse and that thwart, he is almost an auto include. But yeah, so I think if this was a 2-cost gray card, it would see use, but it wouldn't see a lot of use. And
I think it'd be more than you're rating it at, but
you
like,
think?
The point is taken. Like, it's still not an auto include, even if it was available to everybody. Like, it wouldn't go in every deck for sure.
It's very matchup dependent, and it's another one of Vision's cards that feels incredibly situational.
Yeah.
So I've talked about how much I like Vision, but he has a number of cards that are very niche. His defense card is one of them. We're not going to cover that this month. That's a very situational card that I don't use very often, and this is another one that is just like. Yeah, sometimes it's great when it hits, but a lot of times I just end up spending it as a resource.
I've said this about Full Blast before too, but like, I think it's good that this is a 1 of in his deck and not like a 2 or 3. Like, you don't.
It's a tech card.
Yeah, it's a tech card that, like, even in the matchups where you do want it, you don't want it all the time, and it being 1 of in his deck makes it feel special when it does work out. Which is, it's a card that feels really good when you get to play it, even if you frequently don't get to play it.
Which I think is good card design.
It's another example of his cards that I talked about last time that I wish just said, like confuse an enemy, and then if vision is in intangible form, discard an upgrade. If vision is in dense form, do something else. I wish his cards gave a little more flexibility.
But like, what are you discarding if it's not one of the ones with the hero response? Like, that's a very few things.
Right, but I'm saying like that could be the intangible response, and in his dense response could be something totally different, right? Not discarding anything.
If we just added words to this card, it would be better.
But that it would depend on what form you're in. That's my bigger point.
Mm-hmm.
Not that like this can only play in intangible form and it does one thing. I wish it just did something, like maybe it gives a confuse, and then depending on which form you're in, it gave you something else on top of that or something like that.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I think we mentioned this in the last Vision episode.
We
but
did.
Like the ability to like versatile cards like Solar Beam that can truly are pretty good at doing two things are incredibly powerful. And I think it's a good decision to not do that, because it would make Vision insane if every single one of his cards could do two different things. Like, he would be, unless you made those cards like bad, it would be pretty unreasonably powerful. Like, he would maybe be the best hero in the game because there's some mistakes that were made. But like, if this card does all this and also an intangible, like did 3 damage and stunned or something, it would be crazy, because it's just whatever you need.
If I were gonna like errata this card, I would leave it as an intangible only card, but I would add text where you can either choose an attachment on the villain or choose an attachment attached to a minion, and the minion one wouldn't need to have like the hero action, hero response, because there are some problematic minion attachments that you can't get rid of that way, and that makes this a little bit more consistent to use without like just straight increasing the power overall. I would like for the target of the confusion and the target of the attachment to be broken apart too, for power reasons, but thematically I get why they're tied together.
Minion attachments have grown. Like, there were some early on, but they have really exploded, I feel like, the last couple of
Just play red
cycles. And I feel like there was a couple. There was like the Doomsday Chair, right? That was a core set.
Doomsday Chair, man. Oh.
But there wasn't a lot after that. There wasn't many
Zola?
minion attachments.
Zola has a lot.
Zola has some. Yeah. But I think if it was just a choose an attachment on that enemy, right, and discard it, well, then it would be too good. I don't know.
But I think it should be limited to attachments that have hero action or response when attached to the villain, and just any attachment attached to a minion would be great in my eyes. It's a lot more text and yada yada.
Right? Yeah.
But because it'd be really nice and cool if he, for example, could get rid of the upgrade that's in the Doomsday Chair set. Like, nobody else in the game can do that. But it's also not like broken, overpowered or something. It's just it's a cool thing Vision can do.
But then you get into the weeds of things like, if you blanket with Vivian and then use this, you can discard the Infinity Gauntlet, which kind of breaks the whole system. Because if you can blank the Infinity Gauntlet and remove permanent and then discard any upgrade, you just lose the Infinity Gauntlet, and then you can't play Loki right or you can't play Thanos right, and that becomes like a game balancing issue. Which sure, it's not like a competitive game, so it doesn't matter that much. But I don't know if that's what they're intending to do, but it does stop you from breaking the way the game actually functions.
I hadn't thought about
lose that much power
particular interaction before.
So you could. Then
he can't play Vivian anyway, but somebody else at the table could play Vivian. Yeah, I don't know. I think
that's a problem with how Vivian's printed.
So to kind of, and to be clear, listeners, we're talking about the gray basic Vivian. We're not talking about the Vivian in Vision's pack, which we will discuss next week. So please join us to talk about one of the best signature allies in the game. Spoiler. We'll see where we end up on that.
Second only to Red Dagger.
Whoa. Okay. Crazy talk. I think so. This card, in terms of the power, I think it has a high ceiling. It also has a really low floor. Like, there are times when this just, for example, if the enemy has Stalwart and not an attachment, this is just a card. It might as well be blank, right? So it doesn't feel great. And in terms of the fun, I think it's the same thing. It has a high ceiling, right? When you hit an awesome attachment, it feels great. In that sense, it kind of reminds me of, we talked about Nova Prime a long time ago. There are times when Nova Prime hits the table and just is amazing. His ability is insane.
Yeah.
I played a lot of Star-Lord at the Con of Heroes earlier this year, and I think I played against Master Mold with one of those huge Sentinels with a big beefy attachment. None of those Sentinels are elite, and it had like 14 hit points and a tough card and all this, and Nova Prime just came out and vaporized it, and that feels awesome.
It does.
But most of the time, Nova Prime, we were not very positive on that card because it doesn't really hit a lot. Most of the minions, I feel like, have elite these days. Anyway, go back and listen to that episode if you want to. But this reminds me of that in the sense that, like, when it hits, like you were saying, Lethus, it's awesome. You feel crazy powerful. But a lot of the times, you can only hit half the card or you can't hit any of it, and it just feels like, ugh. Or you're not in intangible form at the right time or whatever. There's a lot of things you have to hit here.
It's part of the beauty of Marvel Champions, though, is then you can just spend it. And you're going to, like, you will always have another card to play. So if a card's a resource, as long as not every card in your hand is bad, you're good.
True.
That's why it's a one-of. It's like...
It never will be that every card's bad because Vision is amazing, as we've agreed. He has great cards. No, but so I think the fun, again, is kind of meh for me. Do you guys have more thoughts on this before we go to final thoughts?
One last little detail. Because it just discards things with hero actions or hero responses, you can get around some tricky stuff that some villains do. Like, I know for sure that Ronin, his universal weapon, shuffles itself back into the encounter deck. So if you just discard it with this, it doesn't do that. I think there are some other weapons and stuff that like either deal themselves to you as a face down encounter card or give you an encounter card or something. So it lets you negate all those negatives, and also if it doesn't actually discard itself and puts itself somewhere else or does something sneaky, you can just avoid that with this, which is fun.
Yeah.
If you're playing Vision against Ronin, though, good luck.
Whatever. I did it in true solo.
Did you win?
Okay. So I have some more things I want to say because I wanted to bring up two other cards before we went to final thoughts. Lazy Titan mentioned the two cards that this is similar to, right? It's no longer unique in the fact that it can get rid of attachments with the hero action or hero response text on it. Now we have two others. We have another one which is a hero-specific card, and that is Shadowcat's Phased Strike. And I'll just read these out for the listeners real quick. Phased Strike is a 3-cost identity-specific card that says attack and superpower traded. Hero action, deal 6 damage to an enemy. If you are in phased mass form, you may discard an attachment with the text hero action or hero response from that enemy. That's a Shadowcat card. The other one is an aspect card. That's Sunfire. He's a 2-cost ally with a 1 thwart, 2 attack, 1 consequential each, with 2 hit points, X-Men traded, and it says, after you play Sunfire from your hand, spend a lightning resource and choose an attachment with the text hero action or hero response and discard it. So I wanted to kind of give the listeners the background on those cards. How do we feel like this fits in with those other two? And did I forget one? I don't think I did.
I think it's the second best one.
I mean, it still leaves the only one accessible to most people as being Sunfire. So, like,
yes. Yeah,
I don't know. Like, again, the ceiling on this is still really high. When it all works, it's awesome. And it's still cheaper than the other options. Like, Sunfire makes you spend an extra resource, and it has to be a specific type, which you have to have. Phased Strike costs more. So this still has a place. I don't think this has been, like, rendered obsolete or anything. I think it still has a place and is, I mean, I think it's a good card. It's not always what you want, but I think it as a card, it's good.
It's the cheapest version of this effect.
It
the
is.
other two cost 3 each.
But Shadowcats at least can just deal damage, right? If you can't have the attachment, you can just deal 6 damage, which is below the curve, but you're hitting for something.
I think this is better than Phased Strike. I played Shadowcat a number of times. I've almost never played Phased Strike. It just feels bad. I've only really ever played her in Protection because she's incredible, but it 3 for 6 in Shadowcat doesn't feel good. You want to be playing like cheap, low to the ground cards to like cycle through. At least I wanted to be, and it just didn't feel like it was ever worth it. And also, you weren't really hitting the secondary thing. The 3 for 6 is not great, especially in Shadowcat. But if you get that secondary clause, if you do get that discard, you might go for it depending on the upgrade. So it's still situational, but it doesn't become more ubiquitous just because it does damage. It's still kind of not one of the ones I would play. Sunfire, I would say, is easily the best of the three because it's stable to a 2-cost ally, which is the best kind of card in the game. So
Sunfire is real damn strong.
you just get to play a 2-cost ally with 2 attack, which is about as good as it gets. And then if you need to, you just get a bonus thing.
Yeah.
So
Lethus, thoughts?
I mean, I basically agree on Sunfire. I'd like Phased Strike more than it sounds like you do. I also think Phased Strike is a more interesting card because there's a lot of other little considerations. Like you only get to discard something if you're in phased form, but Shadowcat doesn't really want to attack in phased form, and you can't use your solid card to discount it when you do that. So like there's all these other things where it's not exactly ideal, but it's actually still a really good rate, so it's worth playing. Things are complicated for Shadowcat. Sunfire, I agree. You can play him anyway, even if you don't need the ability, and then you just don't pay for that ability, and it's fine.
Yeah. And you still get 2 attack on a 2-cost ally.
Yeah, which great, awesome. But like I said, I don't feel like it invalidates phase disruption. I still like phase disruption. Yeah, and I mean it works in any aspect. That's also really nice. Yeah, I like it. I think it still holds up.
All right, then let's move into final thoughts. And I'm going to come in with this card a 4 out of 10. This is the first one we've talked about where I'm pretty low on this card. We always talk about 5 as true neutral, so right in the middle. So, 5 is not failing. 5 is just right in the middle. It's a little below that for me. I think it has a high ceiling. It has a pretty low floor. Too often when I'm playing Vision, this lacks a target, and either the villain has Stalwart, or is already confused, or steady, and steady doesn't feel great to use this on, or there's no villain attachment. I do like the art. I think there's a disconnect between the theme and the art, and the theme is really strong in this card. The art is strong, but they are a little bit in discord for me. I think overall it is good, and when it hits, it is amazing, but it's too infrequent for me to give it too high of a score, so I end up at 4 out of 10. Lazy Titan, why don't you go next? And we'll give Lethus the final word today.
I'm going to give this card an 8 out of 10.
Whoa.
I think it's
I didn't see that coming.
excellent, and in that it's exactly what a tech card wants to be, which is, and as a control player at heart, I love me some tech cards. It's exactly what you need. It's pretty cheap, 2, which means you can probably play another card in your turn, which is ideal. It has a pretty solid effect, and then when you get the secondary clause, which is the only time you really ever play this card, it has a great effect because especially as the upgrades get worse and worse, it just becomes better and better, as a lot of them either attack you or cost 2 or 3 resources, usually in weird resource matches. Sometimes it's 3 of the same or 1 of each or some weird combination. But that means that this card is, for 2 costs, confusing the villain and either saving you an attack or saving you 3 resources, which is crazy. And because it's only a 1 of, the only downside really to that is that sometimes you need it and you don't have it. But because you draw through your deck pretty fast in Marvel Champions, you can get there. And also Vision has a couple ways to pull things back out of his discard pile with his phase flipping. He has his 1 cost one, I forget what it's called, that lets you pull something out of your discard pile when he flips. He has ways to get it back, which means even better as a tech card, you can find it, which is exactly what you want. So and because of Marvel Champions, there's no dead cards, so you can just spend it for something else. So it sets itself up. It's great when you need it, and it's just a card when you don't. So it's just like any other card, but a little bit better. I will say the art is a little bit of a disconnect, which docks at some points. And sometimes the Confuse, especially as Steady and Stalwart gets more prevalent, the Confuse becomes less and less important. But it's still quite good.
I'm going to give it a 7. I think it is a good card. I like the design of this a lot. It's fine to me that it's not always optimal, but it's usually playable. And like Lazy Titan said, it's a good tech card. Like when it hits, man, it's really, really strong, and you're going to remember it, and you're going to be glad in that moment that you're Vision. And like that's the goal for a card, right? Like it makes you feel rewarded for playing your hero, and it feeds into the theme of that hero. Like that's awesome. I love it. It's not always amazing. The floor is just okay, which is why I'm not rating it higher. But I like the theme. I like what the card does. I like the cost for it. Like it's a really good card. I like it a lot.
Well, there you go. You and Lazy Titan were a little higher on this card than I was. And listeners, next week we are going to wrap up Vision Month. So if you are loving this, then I'm sorry to say we only have one more episode of Vision, and then we are back to our regularly scheduled content. Maybe you're happy about that. I don't know. If you have comments, winninghandpodcast@gmail.com. I'm always happy to hear them from you. But thank you to both of you for talking about phase disruption today. And next time we're talking about Vivian, like we said. I hope you guys are excited about that one. Not the gray basic Vivian, but the hero-specific Vivian, obviously. And I think it'll be a good discussion, too. I think that's another
I think it will be
card that kind of rounds out what Vision is as a hero. So thanks, everybody, for listening. And for me, Boom Guy, and Lethus, and Lazy Titan, I will say goodbye, and we will see you at the next episode.
All my homies say Venom.
See y'all next time.
Bye, y'all.